can I remind officers or external representatives to switch microphones and cameras off until asked to speak or make a presentation, and to switch back off once they have spoken. So that's the announcement on that. And just one announcement before we take apologies. Can I first of all welcome Thomas Butler along to the meeting from the Youth Forum. Is Thomas there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, he is there. Welcome to the meeting, Thomas.
Thank you.
Okay. And then, secondly, can I welcome also to the meeting Councillor Chris Davis. In fact, it's a return to this committee by Chris, who's now replacing Councillor Howard Barrett. Okay, so once again, Chris, welcome to the meeting, and I'm sure you'll make a valuable contribution.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jones. Thank you for that, Councillor Jones. I'm looking forward and excited to be back at Learning and LGES Scrutiny Committee.
Okay. Now, Thomas, can you advise me, because I'm not sure at the moment, whether you are the sole representative for the Youth Forum, because I have information that Andrew Miller was going to be attending today, replacing Lucy Phillips, who couldn't make it today.
I'll have to check, but as far as I'm aware, it's me, but I'll check for you and get back to you.
Is it the same organisation?
Yes, both.
That Andrew belongs to?
Yes.
Right. Well, we are more than happy to see you here. No problem at all.
Okay, thank you.
Right. On to apologies. I've got apologies from Jeff Beard. I've got apologies from Claire Brown. I've got apologies from Sherelle Jago. And apologies from Councillor David Isaacs. Okay. Item number 2, declaration of interest. Are there any declaration of interest?
We've got 2, Chair. So we've got Michelle Simmons, firstly, and then we've got Councillor Chris Davis. Did you want to come in, Michelle?
The declaration of interest.
Yes, Chair. My declaration of interest is that I'm Chair of Governors for Reader Grieg that's mentioned in part of the report.
Yep. And Chris?
And Chair, I was just seeking clarity, really, and I appreciate we may not have somebody from Democratic or from the Monitoring Officers team here, but obviously all of us, a number of us are governors at schools, and I'm assuming that we've got a blanket dispensation to speak and vote on matters in relation to our roles, particularly those of us who are LEA appointed governors, to speak and vote on the matter in relation to the asset management plan. I'm sure the leader and the cabinet member is probably going to come in and provide some assistance. Put that monitoring officer hat on.
Yes, if I may, Chair, just to reassure Councillor Davis and any other colleagues in the room, you all have full dispensation as you're all school governors in relation to this particular scrutiny committee, so you can engage fully in the reports.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris, I am in attendance here. I've just got other work to do. So, yeah, I agree with Lisa. You have got dispensation.
Thank you
It's
for that.
it's
Chair.
about working together, so don't worry.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Teamwork.
Matt, I didn't see
Thank
you there,
you.
Matt.
No, you're all right, Chris. Thank you very much.
But it was a good issue to raise before the meeting started. I hadn't even thought about it. So there we are. So we move on then to item number 3, agenda item number 3, which is the Service Asset Management Plan. And the report author, and I'm assuming that he's going to go through some of the key aspects of the report now, is Anthony Lewis.
Thank you, Chair.
Now,
thank you, Harvey.
Before Anthony comes in now, to avoid, hopefully avoid, I should say, any confusion regarding agenda items, appendix 1, 2, and 3 of Anthony's report. For those members that have gone through the report, they will have discovered however, have been furnished with separate appendix 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so you should have access to those reports, and the reasons why they are not appended to the main report is, whilst they provide useful information, they do not form an essential part of the report. Okay, so they're there for members to read, but it's not essential for members to have in a public report the names, for example, of every school, primary, secondary, etc., throughout the county borough. No need to have it. And the second reason, and perhaps it may be more important, the Excel files would have been difficult to navigate into the PDF report. Okay? So if members are happy with those explanations, we will ask Anthony to move on. But don't think for one moment that Anthony missed them out, right? And give him a rollicking. He didn't miss them out. There were very good reasons why they should have been left out. I've got a third one, which I won't share with you. But I'm glad myself that those 3 appendix, 1, 2, and 3, were left out of the report. However, members were kept updated because they received those 3 reports under a second heading. Right, Anthony, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Hi all. Just with regards to the report, before I take you to a summary of the report, just to draw your attention to an amendment on page 15. I believe Safe circulated an amended copy of page 15 within the papers just prior to the meeting. There's an additional section in there, 4F, Community Hubs Grant, which details the 2 approved Welsh Government projects as part of that grant. That detail wasn't complete at the time the report was submitted, so that's been added since then and will form part of the asset management plan to be taken forward by Lisa Emerson as part of the overall corporate asset management plan. So with regards to the report itself, as it says in the summary, it does set out the key service priorities that are detailed in the Learning Department's Service Asset Management Plan, and this is part of the wider piece of work with regards to the corporate plan that Lisa Emerson's leading on. In terms of where we are now, let's take you through some of section 5, 5.1 to 5.3. Chris Did you want to come in?
Sorry, Anthony. Yeah, I think I probably feel I need to, because obviously I'm back to committee today in my first meeting. I haven't been circulated with that extra page 4F, but I just wanted to seek some clarity for you in terms of me perhaps needing to declare an interest and have that recorded in the minutes. Anthony, does that include the community focused schools money for the community hubs that may have gone to 3G's Development Trust for the clinic project?
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay, Chair, on that basis, and I've not seen that report because it only was agreed that I would confirmed I would join committee this morning. So I need to declare an interest in that particular portion of the report, although I haven't read it or seen it because it's not been circulated to me. But I'm the acting chair of 3G's Development Trust. So sorry to stop you there, Anthony, but just felt it was important when you said about those community hubs. I suspected that 3G's and the clinic would have been one of those projects. So, Chair, if that could be noted in the minutes, I'd be very grateful.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So the service asset management plan is detailed within the report, and it does reflect the current property portfolio, service priorities, current plans and proposals going forwards, and future property requirements. Discussions have been ongoing with property services and estates regarding the reinstatement of a condition survey programme for schools in order to better inform ongoing capital maintenance and strategic capital investment in school stock. So as a result of those discussions, then we've secured a budget that's allowed us to be able to deliver property condition and suitability surveys of our school and education stock over the 3 financial years 21-22 to 23-24. And that's part of an overall 5-year corporate survey programme, which is running 21 to 26. If I then take members to section 5.6, the survey programme will provide us with up-to-date information on the condition of all our schools and learning department stock, as well as the current backlog maintenance data. And so it's a key part of the overall service asset management plan that's been developed. The key priorities within the plan, and they are detailed in sections 4, 5 and 6 of the plan itself. But I'll pick out some of the key ones. It's the 21st Century Schools programme, the Welsh Medium Education Capital Grant, the Early Years Childcare Offer Capital Grant, Refit Schools Energy Efficiency Scheme, and the Net Zero Carbon options currently being scoped and explored for 21st Century Schools Ban B project. Where we want to be, well, the overall aim of the asset management plan is to improve the standards of accommodation that are suitable for their purpose and sufficient to meet the services requirements. And there's 8 key objectives that have been listed there that underpin those aims. I'm not going to detail those now, but obviously members can see what they are. In terms of what we need to do next to be able to take this forward, because the asset management plan obviously is at a point in time, and it's a key document, and it will be iterative as we move forward. So 6 key next steps have been identified under section 7. I will go through those briefly. So we need to continue scoping high-level proposals for Band C, using the criteria of property condition, suitability, sufficiency of places and flexible use of assets, as is consistent with the Welsh Government's investment objectives. We need to undertake an updated sufficiency review of school places across all our school stock over the medium to long term, evaluating whether there's enough supply or surplus of places to meet demand across all sectors. We need to undertake an updated accessibility review and audit of school stock in line with the consideration of the Equalities Act, and ensure that school sites and premises are appropriately assessed for all issues and barriers. We need to complete the condition and suitability surveys for all our schools and our learning stock, including the assessment of backlog maintenance, so that's critical. We need to then agree a prioritisation of works that come out of the sufficiency review, the accessibility ordinance and the condition survey programme, and that will be critical to informing our service asset management plan going forwards and our capital programme over the MTFP. We need to review this plan then annually in line with any changes to service priorities, the ongoing surveys and any other changes that arise as appropriate, which will need to be reflected. So that's a summary of the report. It does contribute to our RAS strategy as is identified there, and to the wellbeing objectives of the local authority. And it's just then really take any questions from members then, Chair.
Yep, thank you for that, Anthony. Any questions to Anthony on this?
I think Michelle's got a question, Chair.
Michelle?
Thank you. Hi, Anthony. Can I just go back to 3.3 on the targeted services? As a committee, we would just like a bit more information on these services, a bit of an overview really of where we are, a bit more of a clearer understanding about what these teams are doing. I don't know if that would be appropriate for now, or if maybe we could come back to us in the future on that.
In section 3.3, Michelle, you said, or?
Yeah, 3.3.
Okay. So in my report, section 3.3, is that on page 3?
Sorry, on my papers, which I had sent to me, is on page 20. It's a range of targeted services are also available through grant funding, including the school support team and the mental health and youth homelessness team, that one.
I think that's is that the next report, the youth services?
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
sorry. Okay,
that's
ignore
okay.
me.
Thanks, Michelle. I think Thomas also has his hand up.
Hi. On item 6.2, it says you want to remove all condition D and C school buildings from the local authority stock by the end of 2023. I understand. How do you plan to do this?
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, so it's key for us in terms of the condition surveys. They go from A to D. So A is good, and B is satisfactory, C is poor, and D is bad. So as part of our strategic aims is to remove all of the bad and poor stock from our portfolio. And so we're addressing that through the 21st Century Schools programme. We've recently completed Ysgol y Graig New Build, which was our last condition D primary school. And we've currently got within our Band B programme Bishop Headley High School, which was our last condition D secondary school. And we will then face with looking at our condition C stock. So we're again targeting those through Band B. And as we get the condition survey programme updated over the next 3 years, we'll get a reassessment as to which of our schools are condition C and what work is needed to be able to address them back up to either a B or an A. So once we have that information, then we'll be able to target our future capital maintenance programme and our use of any Welsh Government grants that allow us to target that, so that we can move them out to that status. And once the works are done, then we can get them resurveyed. So that's how we're going to try and target them. It is quite ambitious, but obviously having live survey data will allow us then to know how much investment it'll take to achieve that then.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions to Anthony?
I think Chris has got his hand up, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Obviously, having now declared an interest, obviously in the late addition to the item, I'm not going to ask any of the specific questions, Anthony, that I had. But what I wanted to do really is commend you for an excellent report, particularly what you've outlined in section 6 and section 7, where we are now and where we want to be in the next steps. I think this is an excellent report. And as I was saying to members in the pre-scrutiny committee meeting, Anthony, you could have probably brought a lot more detail. Obviously, members have seen the appendices. I referenced the capital programme that's obviously been approved as part of the MTFP that's gone to Cabinet and the Council. Would have been a really interesting aid memoir and further document that could have provided detail to to members, but obviously how long is a piece of string? You know, you could have been probably sending documents all day. So the question I wanted to ask you, this is such a key and integral piece of work for the learning department, and more importantly for the council as a whole. You know, you talk about needing to do quite significant pieces of work. Obviously, the work around the stock condition survey reports, the Band C proposals, the energy and the carbon management proposals, the planning for school places. It's almost like your work programme for the next 10 years is all like outlined in this asset plan, Anthony. But I think what committee would feel, and what we talked about in the pre-meeting, is a further report back to this scrutiny committee at an appropriate juncture when some of that work is further progressed, so we can be kept abreast. I think 12 months away is too long. I think if you're asking Cabinet or Council to consider any decisions at any point, some of this needs to come back to scrutiny for us to have further discussion and debate on it. So, you know, I'll leave that to you, you know, to liaise with the chair and the scrutiny officer. But I think we really need to see the proposals and recommendations for further update reports, Chair, on these pieces of work as and when they are being progressed, so committee can take a view. Thank you very much. But great report, Anthony.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I think with regards to what you've identified there, there's a lot of work that's ongoing across a number of departments in order to make this possible, and there's obviously a lot more work that's needed as well to be able to deliver these. So yeah, we'll have those conversations regarding future updates, etc., so you can have that information in a timely manner then.
Any other questions or observations? If not, Anthony, I would like to thank you on behalf of the committee for an excellent report, and I mean that. I did say it to members in the pre-meeting. We always expect good reports of you, always, and we always do get good reports. This is superseding all those. It's got it all down there for us elected members who are interested in the future of our children's education in Merthyr. This report has got it all. And one of the things that sparked me into reading the SAMP document more than once in the introduction to your report, it said the Learning Department's SAMP, that's the document that we see further on, has been developed as a key part of the Council's raising aspirations, raising standards strategy. And as soon as I read that, that got me going to see how much of an impact the RAS strategy had played in your document here. I see that it played a major part, as you say. The Learning Department SAMP has been developed as a key part of that particular document that I've just mentioned, the RAS strategy. Because what it does is reinforce the decision that members took, I believe it was in November 2020, the Council took a decision to adopt the RAS strategy for the children of Merthyr Tydfil, and this is the first example that I have seen where the RAS has played a major part in writing up anything to do with how we move forward within education in the future. So once again, Anthony, thank you for what is a tremendous document. I sincerely mean that. And I know that members feel that this document has done a lot for us in bringing to our attention what is planned, you know, within the 21st Century Work Programme and others, well, we can see it all. It's all within this program here. And the good thing about it is that you're not just doing it and leaving it. You will return into this throughout the year to make amendments as deemed necessary, but you go back to it annually to give it really the, you know, the scrutiny that it actually needs each and every year. So once again, my sincere thanks to you on behalf of the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your kind words. I have to say, with regards to the RAS, Sue has really made sure that's well embedded right across the department. So, you know, it is something which, you know, we live and breathe as a senior leadership team, and across the whole department, really. So I think it's definitely something which had a significant influence on the asset management plan then that you have today. So
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Chair.
you very much. So we now move on to the recommendation. The contents of this report are discussed and noted. Obviously, we all accept that recommendation. We did discuss it and we have noted the report. Okay. If we move on then to the next item, and this brings in another Chris, this time not Chris Davis, but Chris Hall. Chris, I believe, has compiled the report that appears at number 4 on the agenda, pages 19 to 26. So without further to say, Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just take everybody through the report, and please feel free to ask questions as we go through. Obviously the summary of the report is set out in section 1, and really it's a focus on the statutory youth service elements. So I haven't gone into any detail around the NEETs agenda or the participation agenda, which have both been subject to several reports that have gone to Council and Cabinet previously about the annual performance of those areas. One of the key things to highlight is that whilst we've put this report together, the performance data has not been published for over 2 years now by Welsh Government, and isn't likely to be in the near future. So we are unable to benchmark ourselves as a local authority against other youth services in Wales at this point in time. But the report still gives some indications in terms of how the service is progressing. So I'll take us through into the introduction and background. I've just set out there in 3.1 to 3.3 the statutory responsibilities for the youth service and the additional responsibilities that were placed by Welsh Government on local authorities, and particularly the youth service around the NEETs agenda. And then the element which a question was asked, and I'll pick it up straight away if you like, which was about the range of targeted services that exists within the service alongside our universal provision. So under 3.3, what you've got there is the school support team who deliver BTEC qualifications within schools around personal and social education. You've got a mental health and youth homelessness team, which sounds really grand, but is actually one officer in each of those posts. And that was new money that came in from Welsh Government last year. But the mental health team, as you could imagine, the mental health and youth homelessness almost go hand in hand. So there's some delivery around resilience programs with targeted individuals in schools, and identifying in partnership with the housing department some young people whose families are experiencing or at risk of homelessness in order to do work with them, plus preventative work with some young people around developing life skills that would enable them to better manage money and other things in order that they don't become homeless, better relationships. Certainly one of the things we've done with a piece of work looking backwards was to look at some of the key issues that were driving families to have their 15 or 16-year-old leave the family environment, and family relationships was a key one in that. Then through those are funded through the Youth Support Grant, Inspire to Achieve and Inspire to Work. One is the Inspire to Achieve is a pre-16 programme funded through European resources, which provides a worker to work directly with young people identified as the highest risk of becoming NEET. So that's the reds within the schools. And then the Inspire to Work is your 16 to 24 youth unemployed. And then in addition to that, we have a team that works with, through the team around the family model via the Early Help Hub, to pick up young people where the main cause of concern is around the young person, but they do work with a wider family group. On top of that, then obviously the authority has responsibility around, or the service has responsibility to work with MTBOIF in terms of supporting the participation agenda, and we do the contracting of that service on behalf of the local authority. In terms of where we were, as I mentioned, there's been a geographical model in place across the local authority now since 2015, which looked at roughly about a 3-mile circumference around provisions to provide some equity of access, because we moved from 22 part-time youth centres down to 3 full-time centres. We didn't put one in the north of the borough because it would have been competing with your Dowlais Engine Houses, your 3Gs provision as it was at that point in time. And the structure was implemented after some extensive work by the service over a 2-year period. What it's given us is a real unique position in Wales, and that's come to us through Estyn, it's come to us through when we did the last quality mark, because we very much deliver services hand in hand with the voluntary sector. We share their buildings, we commission them fully in some respects, and certainly the Legacy Fund commissions them fully, and enables us to keep the best of what Community First had to offer, as well through the continuation of the provisions at the Dowlais Engine House, Gellidaeg Foundation and the 3Gs Development Trust, which is now overseen by Merthyr Valley Homes in terms of the delivery of that service. What that's given us is an improved strategic focus and partnership working with the third sector. And what that led to in 2018 was the service securing the quality mark across Wales. And that's something that will come up again when we look at the next steps. But that was awarded to the youth service and its partners. Organisations can apply individually, but we put it in as an entire service across the local authority. One of the things we've been working on over the number of years is that there were 3 separate strategies in place across youth. One was the NEAT strategy, one was the youth service strategy, and the other is the youth support services strategy. Now, all 3 of them are extremely important when it comes to Estyn and future inspections of the local authority's education support services, because there are responsibilities that still exist in the youth support services. Although, for those of us who are old enough to remember it, the Children and Young People's Partnerships obviously no longer exist, but the functions there about being clear about what's available for young people across the community and are there any gaps, etc., is still very much a responsibility for the local authority to be aware of. Where we are now, our current structure of provisions is reliant upon the partnerships we have with the third sector for both our local authority youth services and for both our delivery and for access. In some areas we rent the buildings, in some areas we fully commission out, in some areas we have a complete partnership approach like Treharris, where our staff manage and maintain and operate the facility. But what we find with those services, and this is extremely important, is whilst we're there with contributing to the overall running of the building or financing some of the building, that underpins a lot of the other provision that the community can access in those facilities, including things like Flying Start and other clubs and activities that go on within those settings. Current performance of the service, as I mentioned, it's not been published by Welsh Government and is an inability to benchmark at the moment. But you can see in the table 1 under 5.2 is that currently in 1920, our engagement level dipped to 29.4%, and in 2021 it's dipped to 21.32 for the percentage of 11 to 25-year-olds. Now, I'm not surprised at that in terms of the 2021, because obviously it's impacted by COVID, and that would also then have a knock-on impact to the accreditation that the service could engage with. But what you will see in the 1920 figures for engagements by young people, there were 31,735 visits to engaging with youth services and youth workers across the county borough in 1920. In 2021, that drops drastically to 6,710. Now that's where COVID has really started to hit. So what we found is we're engaging with young people a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, but unless it gets back to face, they're really struggling with, and it's something that's come through all of the information we've had, is they've really struggled with engaging with these type of services online. They want face-to-face delivery, they want activities back in order for them to be able to socialize in their communities. So it's a significant drop off in the engagements there, which we would expect to see pick back up on fully reopening facilities. In terms of any questions anybody wants, or shall I carry on? No, in which case I'm going to...
Sorry, I was just going to ask you, you've quoted some figures there of numbers of engagements, but I can't see those figures in the report. All I can see is percentages. So have you got that in your narrative?
Underneath,
and it's just not recorded in the report?
Underneath your table of the percentages, Chris, under 5.3.
I can see it now. Sorry, 5.3. Yeah. Sorry, I missed that. I was focused on the tables. Could I just ask in future if where it's possible and practical that where you report percentages, can you try and report actual numbers as well? It's always a good thing to get a comparator, because that means nothing. I know you've done it in this case, but if for future reference, you in table 1 and in table 2. You've just reported the percentages. I know you put the numbers in brackets of engagements, but if we could have percentages alongside figures, Chair, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, Chris. I'm just trying to see if I can pull that information for you right this second. Bear with me 1 second. I'll carry on and I'll do this at the same time.
We'll see how good Capita is, look.
No, this is Lily. I'll go to for the audit for this year, for 2021, if I give you the exact figures for what those percentages mean in that table. So in terms of 2021, let me see if I can make it bigger for myself to read. We're talking about, in terms of the percentage of young people engaging in services, and this is individuals now, yeah, this is unique individuals, 2,184 young people engaged in 2021, and that's in comparison to 3,012 in 1920.
Great, thank you for that, Chris.
And that's the 11 to 25 age group. Okay, so in terms of accreditation, sorry, I've got Francis has got their hand up. Chair, are you okay for Francis to come in?
Yeah. Francis?
Well, I'm not 100% sure if it's the right point to bring this up, but where you were mentioning the Inspire to Achieve and the Inspire to Work schemes, obviously they were funded with European Social Fund money. Have we had any inclination of will the total costings be covered by the Shared Prosperity Fund, or is that not still up in the air at the moment about the future financing of those Inspire 2 schemes?
It's a bit still up in the air at this moment in time. We would hope that it would, at the very minimum, cover the entire cost of those programs going forward. But a key issue for us has been that we've often had to focus, because of the funding envelope, we've had to focus on year 10 and year 11. And really, we could do with extending some services to years 7, 8 and 9. So I know there's another report going to be going to a scrutiny committee about all of the European funding money coming in to the local authority. And really, we need to start to develop that authority-wide approach, because it's going to impact also on partners in the college, in Careers Wales, around the future applications to that Shared Prosperity Fund. But the information coming out on Shared Prosperity at the moment is very, very limited.
Right, no problem. Thank you very much, Chris.
No problem. So in terms of the accreditation, which is one that Estin often talk about in terms of youth services, we've currently got 14% of young people aged 11 to 25 gaining a qualification, and it was 23% last year. Again, in terms of what that means in actual numbers, You're talking in 2021, it was 310 young people. And in 1920, it was 703 individual young people. Now, that figure is always a movable feast because it always depends upon the number you engage with. It is a percentage of those engaged in the service. But traditionally, Wimmerth has been in the top quartile for its accreditation work with young people because of the range of services we have on offer across the different areas and the way we work in partnership with schools in order to deliver that as well and to achieve it. But again, we're unable to benchmark that at this point in time against other local authorities to see how others are doing. But one of the key issues we know, and it's mentioned in, I think, the next paragraph in the report 5.4, is where the schools have had such disruption, our teams will have had such disruption, and we won't expect that really to hit until next year when we look at the outcomes data for next year, because we were able to complete BTEC delivery with the pupils towards the end of the summer of 2020. So we might feel the full force of that really within the next 12 months in terms of that impact upon the accreditations. Moving down, I've given a summary of the budget in terms of both the core and grant. Chris, you've got your hand up? Yep.
Yeah, Chris, I just wanted to come back to those accreditations and thank you for giving us those figures. Obviously, that's over a 50% drop, which is to be expected because your accreditations are based on those engagements, absolutely. I just wanted to get some clarity for you in terms of the numbers of engagements and the numbers of accreditations. Do they cover both the council-run youth services and any partners that we commission youth support services from as well? So some of those legacy-funded organisations, it includes the totality and some of those accreditations, some of those BTECs in schools as well?
Yeah, it does cover all partners because within each SLA, what we've done is negotiate and work with all partners to say that these are the things, these are the areas, if you like, of importance both to Estin, both the local authority, so that developing accreditations and achieving accreditations and giving young people those opportunities is built into all SLAs we have across the authority, including the legacy funding. So if stuff is commissioned through the youth support grant or through legacy, those elements are built into the contracts.
Great, thank you for that.
Okay. So in terms of the table 3, which is funding, I've just set out there obviously the total amount of funding that's been available to the service across a number of years of the same time period, in order to give officers, elected members, a flavour of what's going on. But that has to be taken into account, and this relates to an earlier question. There are also additional funding coming in, which doesn't get captured through the Welsh Government audit return, which is the Inspire programmes. And as you can see there, it's just over £500,000. Family First funding for its role in team around the family and the needs coordination. And the needs coordination being a critical element of that, because that team, its work and the needs work being wholly reliant upon the analysis work we do with high schools around identifying the reds, the ambers and the greens, those at high risk of disengaging from education. Michelle, got your hand up?
Yeah, we were just wondering if we could have a bit more detail or if it could be provided to the committee on the core and the grant funding, and also a map of where the youth provisions are across the borough, please.
In terms of the core funding, on the appendices that I've set out with the report, there is a map of the provisions across the borough in the North Cluster, the Mid Cluster and the South Cluster, which is via the structure that was agreed with Council back in 2015 when reshaped. Also identified those organisations in receipt of core funding and those in receipt of other support grants, so Legacy Fund and the Youth Work Support Grant. So those are set out in that appendices and how the targeted provision is funded. But I think what's important is when we move towards the cluster-based model through the local authority, the actual allocation in terms of contribution towards a facility was set the same level across each of those areas. So we only pay the same amount in terms of Troy Boys and Girls Club, Georgetown Boys and Girls Club, as a maximum of about £7,000 to have full use of their facilities. And as I say, that funding underpins the the wider use of community-based facilities for a whole range of groups as well. As you can imagine, Flying Start contribute to those facilities, the youth service contributes to those facilities, and it allows the community to have a wider access of services there. But that's pretty much the map. There are additional youth providers across the borough which we don't fund, and I've given an example of those, I think, in the on the appendices as well, which, for instance, at this moment in time is Aberfan, H-Factor in Aberfan. We don't commission with Stevenson George, and we don't commission with Bridging the Gap, not out of any core funding or annual Welsh Government funding that comes into the service. We have worked with all three of those through the summer on the Summer of Fun activities. You know, and if that pot of money continues, we would hope to continue delivering in partnership with those organisations. Is that enough information, or was there something? There's no appendices attached to the. Right. Thank you for that, Chris. In which case, can I suggest I'll read off the organisations. Thank you for that, Chris. I didn't realise. I'm not sure why the appendices is not there. So, okay, in terms of a map of provision in the north of the borough, what we've got is the Legacy Fund funding both the Dowlais Engine House and Merthyr Valley Homes to deliver youth provision in those areas. In the mid cluster, in the middle of the borough, the local authority works in partnership with Georgetown Boys and Girls Club, and that's out of core funding. There's also the Gellideg Foundation in terms of the Legacy Fund. Toynrod in Action Group, there was funding put aside by the council out of core for a 1-year support to that organisation. However, we've been able to offset that money through underspending another grant over a number of years, which has allowed that to continue for the past, I think it's 3 years now, and that the provision is available again. Mentiriaeth, we commission a Welsh language provision out of the Welsh Government's Youth Support Grant, and that's been commissioned for the last 3 years, and continues to be in our plans because it's the only fully Welsh language provision we've got available across the borough. In the south, the Willows Centre in Troederoo, we work in partnership with Troederoo Boys and Girls Club, who we fully commission to deliver that service on behalf of the local authority. And Treharris Boys and Girls Clubs, again in the south, we have a situation there whereby we work in partnership with the Treharris Boys and Girls Club, where we manage their building and their facility by working in partnership with them through our staff team. And we have a street-based service who work across the local authority area, often responding to hotspots of antisocial behaviour, etc. But they do spend a fair amount of their time within parks and within the skate park, and that's core funded as well. And then targeted provisions, we have the school support team, the Inspire teams, the youth support, the team around the family. We have the needs coordination and the wellbeing and homelessness prevention. I will ensure, Chair, that appendices is sent round. I'm not sure why it's missing from the report.
Well, Chris, if I may come in here, I've got it, and it's at page 25 of your report.
Thanks, Chair.
I got it. There it is there. Certainly got it. Okay.
In which case, I'll move on, Chair. Section 5.7 just outlines some of the work that was done during the pandemic, but what we found, it was difficult for young people to engage, not because of a lack of online access for some of them, because a lot of them have mobile phones. It was just that they wanted more face-to-face, and obviously opening clubs with 30 or 40 young people coming in a night, you couldn't achieve the same kind of delivery when doing one-to-one. But there was quite a bit of work done online. I think that's important to note, actually, because I didn't note it in the report, is we haven't relied on online data about engagements in order to be able to report the Welsh Government. So whilst we've had a massive drop-off in engagements, we haven't looked at who actually was linking in online. We've only been able to do it where we could fully evidence that engagement. So where we want to be, obviously, given the negative impacts of COVID, we want to be fully open, and facilities are reopening to young people and offering the wider group work activities that young people will know and be involved in across the local authority. We are developing a new strategic plan. We did a consultation with young people during COVID. It was difficult. There wasn't huge amounts of engagement in it, but we've got the views of about 150 young people. So we need to develop a new plan, but we are looking to condense 3 plans down into one in order to have a youth support services plan. And the youth support services steering group have been involved in the discussions around that plan over the last year. And we would look to be bringing that back to Scrutiny for Scrutiny to review. Our next steps in terms of the quality mark, it is an unfortunate position, but because of the COVID situation and the move from the quality mark from one body towards the Education Workforce Council, our bronze award is in what's classed as a lapse period at the moment. It doesn't mean we've got to go for a full renewal, but we are doing work currently to actually have that re-endorsed in order to, it's a slightly less work, but not much less, but we're looking to have that re-endorsed at bronze, and then we're looking to actually move that towards a silver mark. And again, that would be across the entire service, not just the statutory, but our partners as well. And then obviously the reliance on grant funding, we have to look significantly towards the grant funding issues we've got, which have already been touched upon. Needs coordination. There's a review of a review of Families First at the moment, and that needs coordination role is absolutely significant in terms of identifying those young people in schools who are on the verges of disengagement, and us having a proactive approach to engaging with them. We've already met with Careers Wales around the Shared Prosperity Fund, and myself and the Chief Officer, Sue Walker, have already had some discussions about how that potentially needs to develop into a future partnership approach across the local authority, because there are various teams in different departments across the local authority that are funded out of ESF resources, and teams in the college, if we're to prevent young people from dropping out when they get to college. So we need a partnership approach to any future shared prosperity application. Legacy Fund, we've been made aware by Welsh Government this week. There were some rumours about it, but they are reviewing what is currently funded in the Children and Communities Grant, what funds make it up. And we would hope for a ministerial decision on the future of the Legacy Fund, because it was only ever put into place for a 2-year period, and it's now been with us for, I think it's 4 years. So the Minister is currently looking at the continuation or not of that fund, and it has been put up to the Minister as in it needs to continue by his civil servants, but any changes would be expected to be seen in 22-23 as a transitional year, but we wait for Welsh Government information about the legacy. But obviously the impact of that is 3 big youth providers across the borough potentially having to seek alternative resources in order to continue their services. And then the last one is the work we do around well-being in partnership with schools and the team around the family in order to make sure those wider group work activities can be reinstigated. Because what we found prior to the pandemic was we were doing some wider group work activities in partnership with schools, and it reduced the demand on our one-to-one working in terms of our team around the family. So that's the where we are now, and then what we need to do next. I've sort of covered in the same area as areas chair. So we're reviewing what's worked during the pandemic, finalise the plans in terms of getting that in to be able to consult on with both Scrutiny and other partners, explore further funding opportunities, and then guidance on the future of the Legacy Fund. I've set out in 8 and 9 contributions to the Raising Aspirations and Raising Standards, and in the 9 a contribution to wellbeing objectives. I think one thing I would probably say on addition to that is we are being made aware that youth services will be a key focus within any future local authority inspections for education services. And there is a debate going on currently with Estyn, which is that should they actually be restarting separate Estyn inspections just for youth services, as they used to do previously. But I don't know if, Sue, you want to come in on anything on that, or?
No, that's all we know at the moment. We don't quite know what's happening with local authority inspections, but we have been told that any inspection, certainly over the next year, 18 months, will have a key focus on youth services.
Okay, thanks for that, Sue. Any questions anybody's got? I'm happy to field as much as I can, and Sam Morgan would be here to do it, but she's on annual leave, unfortunately.
Any questions now? Because we've had a few on the way through. No?
Chris?
Yes, please, Chair.
Chris?
Michelle, did you want to go first?
No, go on, you go first, it's fine.
Are you sure? No, ladies first. Go on, Michelle.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Chris. The report talks a lot about NEETs. Do we have the latest figures of NEETs and any information on destinations, please?
Yeah, I can. It's not included in the report because of it's normally a report into a separate report. But if you give me 1 second, I will pull up the last report that was in, and I will give you the highlight figures from it.
Thank you.
NEETs, here we go. 1 second. Okay, there was a report done for Cabinet back in June, and the key information within it is our NEETs figure for 2020, which is the last verified and published set of data, rose to 2.7%, which equated to 14 young people. Okay.
Yep.
That is 3 young people higher than the previous year.
Okay.
But what we found was, when analysing those young people, because one of the things, and I should say as well, as Merthyr, we know where every single young person has gone. Some local authorities have significant numbers of young people where they don't know what's happened to them. So relying on just the NEET figure alone can skew how you think about your performance. And the All Wales figure for NEETs is currently standing at 1.7%. So we are 1% above that, but we know where every single young person has gone. Some local authorities add up to 2.6 and 3% of young people where they didn't know where they went. So it's I think it's the 4th or 5th year in a row where we've been able to show we know where every single young person has gone. So if I give you one of the things in terms of the school leavers, what we know about the school leavers is, out of the young people. Hang on, am I looking at the right report here? Oh, hang on. I'm not sure if I'm looking at the right report. Bear with me. Yeah, I would have been. One of the things we found in terms of the school leavers is that the majority that became NEET this year were identified as green within their school, within the vulnerability profiling. And what we also identified was those who were actually red, we'd had an improved position on. In terms of the young people who were red, actually more of them had gone into provision than in previous. So there was quite a good success at the EOTAS provision with young people transferring into destinations in comparison to the previous year. And that was because of some concerted work that had gone in with EOTAS in terms of those provisions. But a substantial number of greens became NEET this year. Some of them had gone into provision and dropped out very quickly before the October deadline. But that's why the figure went up significantly, or up to that 2.7% during this year. And we've done some backtracking to make sure that the vulnerability profiling is correct. And what we've done is to find out that there was nothing that would have highlighted them within the school framework in order to say, yes, these young people should have been categorised as red or not. They were green, they were right to be green, they've just not gone into provision. We know, for instance, in this year that a number of the young people, the highest destination still remains the college. Far more young people go into the college in terms of further education and other colleges than actually progress into employment, with them taking a significant proportion. It's around 90% of participants who annually progress to a post-16 into college. I'm trying to nick information out of another report at the same time as talking to you. But I can share, if colleagues wish, Chair, I can share the report that went into Cabinet, or we can agenda for a future meeting. Does that answer your question on the NEETs, Michelle?
It does, Chris. Thank you very much for the clarification.
No problem. Chris?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, it looks like the chair may have dropped off. I think, Chris, it would be really helpful, I think, to share that Cabinet NEETs report to members. We will have, though, as you have just tried to articulate there, as you were skipping through the two reports, and thank you for that to get the data. We will have, obviously, the summer. I'm assuming the Cabinet report from June doesn't capture the leavers now that obviously left at the end of the summer term. And obviously their destinations, and I think it would be very interesting when we look at that October deadline of those when 90% are going on to FE provision or training providers, whether we are monitoring and continuing to track that dropout rate. So I think, you know, I'm sure the chair will come back. It might be really useful because NEETs is such an important thing that we look to have a future report back to committee.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fine with me, Chris, in terms of that. I think what we do each year is we do a position statement around, because obviously, as you say, we've got to wait for those young people to leave school to understand what happens to them. And one of the big changes in European funding and a national decision across Welsh Government was that until those young people actually drop out of provision, we're not allowed to handhold them across into their post-16 destination. Once they leave school, we've got to leave them either become NEET and then pick them back up, but we can't do that transition. But what we looked at in terms of young people in 2021 leaving school was that there were 114 year 11 had been supported and tracked. So there were 114 high-risk young people that we were tracking and supporting and monitoring into their destination. 21 were categorised, let's look in. Through support, 123 of the 135 had a transition plan in place from leaving year 11. So we were then at this point in time when the original report was written, we were concentrating on the other 12 young people in order to make sure they had a transition plan in terms of going into an effective destination. But yeah, there's still some significant barriers which young people face, and we identify that in the report annually around mental health. Some of those who are really struggling with their mental health have been a key barrier in terms of their movement across into a post-16 positive destination. Yeah.
Great. Chris, now, Chair, if you wouldn't mind, my question was around 5.7 of the report, Chris, and you've highlighted some really key bullet points there in terms of the youth support services approach to supporting young people during what's been a really difficult 19 months during COVID. And, you know, I was just saying to committee members prior to the meeting about obviously the work that's being done in Merthyr Tydfil, the Lloyds Bank Foundation work, bringing partners together now to look at the opportunity to access some money from the community fund on a programme called Mind Our Futures. And I just wondered whether you could just share a couple of things added to committee around, and maybe it'd be useful sharing with committee the youth service survey results that were done during COVID very locally at Merthyr Tydfil, and you've talked a little bit about some of the work that some of the teams have done, but it's one more that we can be doing around young people's mental health and their emotional well-being as a priority for the youth service, particularly as we hear from you and Sue, that will be some kind of focus now around a future LG's Estyn inspection.
Yeah, I think in terms of the, I'm trying to find it now, Chris, to remind myself. In terms of the consultation that was done with young people, what we went out to them on was the previous strategy identified opportunities for accreditation, well-being, and other things about being priorities. And young people come back and were very much articulating those are all still key priorities for them. But within, so they still wanted access to opportunities for accreditation and learning. They said that yes, well-being and their safety were key things that they had concerns about. Often from a safety aspect was about other young people and about how to deal with bullying, how to deal with challenge, etc. In terms of the well-being, it was very much around relationships. I'm trying to talk now from memory, and it was very much around them looking at what priorities they wanted to address in terms of their own well-being going forward. And the main ones that came through were about anxiety, dealing with anxiety. How do they deal with anxiety? How do they manage their own feelings, turning into aggression and dealing with frustrations, etc., around managing their own emotions and how to positively display those rather than negatively display them, and very much around family relationships and how they can work, how they can not allow their emotional states to impact upon the relationships around them. And there's a little bit there about, you know, emotional intelligence of knowing who you can challenge but in different ways. But some of those were key things that they came back with in terms of saying these are priorities for us as young people in terms of that. But it was very much around anxiety and stress management, about managing relationships and about managing their own emotions, particularly dealing with anger and how a young person manages their own anger in terms of that. Sorry, Chris, I can't put my hands on the report straight away.
No,
but I'm happy to circulate it.
It's good to see those themes, and I think that'd be really helpful. If you would indulge me, I just wanted to make a comment really, and obviously to say it's great to see Gavin Metherham as the new head of ALN at the committee meeting today. And I think, you know, it's going to be really, really important that the work of the ALN service tied up and linked in with the youth services on that really focused piece around some of those more vulnerable young people who go across the borough. You know, some of those with ALN. I say this with my hat on as chair of the Pupil Referral Management Committee. You know, that cohort of young people, the cohort of young people at Greenfield Special School, and also those young people in that NEAT criteria. And Gavin, I think, you know, so you will know kind of my ask of you in terms of the development of an ALN strategy, and you know, with Gavin being in post now, really welcome all of those strands being put together, building upon what we've heard today in the youth services report, that we can get you know, a strategy that's fit for purpose, that best supports the children and young people across Merthyr Tydfil.
Thank you for that, Councillor Chris Davis. Chris, any more questions to Chris Hall? Any more questions? No? Chris, I've got one. You've already, in fact, given the answer to the question I'm going to have, but it's of such, I think I'll repeat it so that members are aware of where we are, where we hope to be with the legacy funding. Because within your document, you mention at 7.4, that's the last page of the document, once guidance on the future of the legacy fund is available, An analysis report will be provided and a transition plan to implement the new guidance. It'll come to scrutiny and the tackling poverty group. Now, if one was to leave that without mentioning paragraph 6.4, where it says at the third bullet point down, the legacy fund, if it was to go, could mean the loss of several youth providers. And by the youth providers, obviously that means the Dowless Engine House, Merthyr Valley's Home, which is the X3Gs, and the Gellideg Foundation. That's what we're talking about in the main when we're talking about the legacy fund. However, there's also growing concern about the lack of resources for other third sector provision compared to these providers. So we can extend the story if we wanted to. Now, I noted what you said about the Welsh Assembly government hopefully coming forward in 2022-23. Fair time off, but hopefully we get what is deserved in Merthyr Tydfil. Where do you feel we are at this moment in time?
I think at this moment in time, Chair, we've got a strong position in terms of the Gellideg Foundation, the Dowless Engine House, and the North Merthyr Valley Homes provision that, as you say, used to be 3Gs. They've had, I mean, you've got to go back to the original purpose of the funding. The purpose of the funding for legacy was to continue the best of what had been achieved within Communities First, and those organisations were identified as having those provisions. And what we did was set up a partnership to look at the exit plan from Community First funding and agree the development of the legacy fund. I think what we've got currently in the borough, so we've got those as strong organisations who are central to delivery in those areas. They're absolutely fundamental to delivery in those areas. And they make up part of the map of the service of delivery across the local authority, which without would leave some major holes. What we've got now is an indication from Welsh Government that they are going to recommend that the fund continues, but we won't know that except from the Minister in due course, which they would hope to have with us before Christmas, because they know we would have to exit contracts if necessary. But even if they continue the funding, there is comments, if there's there's comments, there's other organisations who are asking, why just them? Why is it for those organisations? And we've got to be careful, because if the funding comes from Welsh Government and we spread it so thinly, we'll put a number of organisations at risk. So we've got to be clear, but I think it is going to be a difficult decision in terms of if the legacy funding continues, how we utilise that money. And therefore, I think we do need a group of people to be able to look at that, to scrutinise it and work on a future arrangement in terms of developing that. But we're not really going to have a clear indication on that up until probably November or December time.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Chris. Very, very helpful. Are there any other questions from members? If not, Chris, once again, an excellent report. It have got many, well, if not all the issues that you were facing within the youth service, mainly associated with funding. Let us hope that the Welsh Government are sympathetic to the cause in Merthyr at least. But once again, on behalf of the committee, thank you very much for an excellent report, as always, like other officers within the authority. And I thank you for coming along here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So we now move on to the next item.
Chair, can I come in a
Certainly.
minute, Councillor? I'm going to leave now, but I'd like to, I need to speak to Michelle Simmons at the end of the meeting. So Safe, can you call me back in at the end of the meeting so I can have a conversation with Michelle?
Yeah, no problem, Sue. I'll do that.
Thanks. Thanks, Safe. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so yeah. We then on to the forward work programme, which comes up at every meeting. You've all been given a copy of the updated work programme. You can see where we are within the date, 13th of September, today, which is on page 33. The next meeting is the 8th of November, when you can see the two items on there. One is to do with COVID. Are there any questions on those two items, or are you content for Saif and the relevant officers to proceed with those particular items at this point in time? Yes, all happy? Okay.
Happy, Chair.
On to the next item, scrutiny referrals. Saif?
No, nothing received, Chair, no.
So on to item number 7, reflection and evaluation of the meeting, to receive an update from the chair. I don't usually take this liberty to express what I thought about the two items. I thought that the two reports were excellently prepared. The officers gave the questions that did justice to the reports. It's up to members whether they felt now that, you know, the reports were good as far as this meeting were concerned. Members happy with the reports? Yes.
Yeah, Councillor Jones, I'd echo your sentiments. I think they were two excellent reports. Having not been a committee for over 2 years, it's really great to see that quality over quantity. I think back in the day, we would go through 3 or 4 reports. We've had a great opportunity this afternoon to pre-meet, to come up with some questions that we've shared amongst the members, to ask those of the officers, and to have a real deep dive into the SAMP in terms of the asset management plan and youth services. I think it's been a really productive, positive and useful conversation this afternoon. So well done, Chair, and everybody, and to the officers. Thank you to them for their reports.
Yeah, I think as far as the latter report is concerned on the youth service, a very, very interesting report if you read into it deep down, because, you know, Chris has been grappling with problems, still grappling with problems, and at the same time, you've got other problems within the Welsh Government itself being put on top of him, made him think, well, how the hell do we get over this? But there's a challenge there for him, there's a challenge for the departments, and there's a challenge for the Welsh Government, is out to make sure that the youth service has got enough resources to cater for all those youngsters that make an effort to get involved with the youth service. As far as the number 1 report is concerned, that is how we basically look at how our education buildings are handled over the next X couple of years. Well, it's there for everyone to see. You know,
not only from the little pieces that they build onto every school to facilitate little 3-year-olds coming into the school for the first time. It's there, you know, for many, many years after that, and we land up with a situation where we've got new schools being built and having to consider what schools we need for the future. So at least that is moving along, and that can only benefit the children of this county borough. Right, if there are no other questions or observations, I thank you all for attending and declare the meeting closed.